na to. So what we have so far, no? So far, the so-called ontological proof of God's existence as a trace in the reason that leaves faith and the encounter with God is something we have to pay attention to. Now we move to the many names of God and the characteristics of God. Anselm shows that there is a continuity in understanding God as IQMCN with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and of course, the God revealed in Jesus Christ. From God as the summum bonum, Anselm proceeds to not just name the characteristics of God, but come to terms with how he can be known as such. It is a return from the philosophical notions of God to the God of scriptures. And here we see the many names: incorporeal, but all perceiving, without body, but all perceiving; omnipotent, but cannot do many things, no, cannot sin, cannot do evil; merciful, but impassible, no, uh, merciful and just; how God is the life by which he lives by and in himself; how God is unlimited and eternal, but not in the way that other spirits are; and how God is both seen and unseen. These are the aspects that you see there in 5 to 12 or 14 even. So the fifth chapter of Anselm now shifts to talking about who this God is. Again, remaining still within the establishment of this unum argumentum through a dynamic conversation with the Lord, Anselm now goes into a discussion within the conversation of who God is. No? And that's what you see there in chapter 5, no, of the Proslogion. There. So notice that here, Anselm draws a tight connection between the God proven as IQMCN and the God of the scriptures. Perhaps in the same way that when we meet a person, we try to square and compare how that person acts and how he's described in his profile, portfolio, resume. In a way, we can see some form of progression that happens here. First, he recognizes the philosophical and scriptural names of God as being that which is better to be than not to be, hence truly real; as subsistent being, a fancy way of saying that while all other reality are, in the plainest sense, contingent, our existence being unnecessary; and as creator, the source and end of everything that exists; and as the supreme good, all the goodness, justice, truth, holiness comes from him and reach their fullness in him. So here for Anselm, these are the names of God that are very clear and pose no problem. The difficult thing to make sense of would be the following descriptions that would follow all the way to chapter 13. And that's what we were talking about a while ago, right? Uh, that's when we talk about how God is perceiving, but he is without body, incorporeal; how he's omnipotent, but he cannot do many things; how he's merciful, but unmoved; how is he just, but he spares those who are evil. Until 13, as we said, no? How he punishes justly, but spares those who are evil also. justly punishes, justly spares, how he is merciful and just in all his ways, how God is the life by which he lives, and similarly for similar attributes, and how he alone is unlimited and eternal, although other spirits are also unlimited and eternal. The difficult thing, as we said, can be found all the way until chapter 13, with the interlude of chapter 12 as the key to understanding everything. Chapter 12, there. But surely, whatever you are through no other than through yourself. Therefore, you are the life by which you live, the wisdom by which you are wise, the goodness by which you are good, both to those who are good and those who are evil, and similarly for similar attributes. After all, chapter 13 is Anselm's own way of differentiating God from other things that share some of his characteristics. With this, we can interpret this long discussion in many ways. One would be to look at these with the eyes of the scripture and the doctrines of the Christian faith. Anselm tries to make sense of the different ways of naming God and sees how they can be resolved in one way or another. In this regard, he expands an understanding of God by bringing together what seems to be contradicting into a meaningful combination, like puzzle pieces, which seem incongruent in the beginning, but eventually make sense in the long run. One may see, however, or one may, however, wonder, why does Anselm push it to its limits and say, you know what, Lord, you are all these, period. The only definitive answer that he gives in chapter 12 is, you are who you are, which actually means, I may have reconciled all this, Lord, but you remain to be something that is out of my reach, out of my grasp. In other words, what Anselm truly arrives at is not so much a defined concept of the Lord in the same way that we define and make sense of other objects of our experience. Rather, the way the Lord makes himself known is in different ways only means that perhaps, like those who truly know him, who he is cannot be completely known and defined. What happens in trying to reconcile all these images and descriptions is reflecting the struggle of knowing who this God is and what he means for me. One way of understanding this is, I believe, is to look how it is mirrored in our relationship with other people. Take, for example, the experience of a married couple. No? What's the experience of a married couple? Perhaps during their first dates, each of them takes their best foot forward, showing up on time, becoming cordial and respectful, and even becoming hesitant with many things. In the first few dates, some attitudes emerge and they will either have to adjust to each other and call it quits. Should they get married, there are still more things to be reconciled, even the mundane ones. The sound of one's snore, bathroom habits, morning routines, etc. Even until they grow old. As they grow old together, new things will eventually surface, and they have to be reconciled with the given knowledge that they have of each other. This is not, however, some of the conceptual matter. This is not some conceptual matter because for those who believe, it is very difficult to come to terms with these contradicting terms and descriptions. We can push this a little bit further. You can look at, for example, the knowledge of the other in alterity, right? But also, or more importantly, the struggle of knowing the possibility of irreconcilable differences. Uh, for the Jews, for sexual abusers, for genocide, ba? We still need to reconcile God where He is there. The experiences of the Jews during the Holocaust, who think that they have been faithful to the last letter of the law, and yet they find themselves becoming victims of the concentration camps. Perhaps we have a friend who thinks that the death of their father due to cancer, or the unstable mental conditions that hampered their well being, or even inherited problems from their grandmothers, grandfathers, are punishments from the Lord. This is all the more accentuated when one believes to be faithful to the Lord. Faith is not a shield to suffering. I have become prayerful enough. Why won't the Lord spare me and my family from all the bad things? Why do those who got away with evil have all the luxury? Why won't God just give me and my family a good life, free from big problems that perhaps nobody has? But on a more global scale, we are facing things and realities in which we are even forced to ask ourselves, where is the Lord in all this? The pandemic, the recent typhoons, global warming, discrimination, genocide, to name a few. Note that in these, nobody is spared, and even our trusted institutions are guilty. In other words, we face situations in which we come face to face with Anselm's concern. And what is Anselm's concern? Where is God in all this? Where is God in all this? Nasaan ka sa lahat ng to? The question of Job, if you paid attention, where was God when you needed Him the most? That's the question there. In the psalm, it says more beautifully, how long, O Lord, will you hide your face from us? God is known by many names and descriptions, but in the long run, will still evade all these concepts. Ito yung pinag-uusapan ni Ice at saka ni Eddie Boy, yung asymptote. Diba? Yung asymptote. Uh, yung asymptote. Yan yung dalawang line na hindi magdidikit kahit anong mangyari. Diba? Paul Ricoeur himself recognizes these in writing his essay on naming God. His investigation of the different ways of naming God in the scriptures led him to the conclusion that our knowledge of God will always be asymptotic. We approach to one aspect or one way of knowing God. However, in such way of knowing, we're even more introduced to knowing the other aspects of the Lord, not just in the scriptures, but also in our personal experience of Him. As a result, we gain a plurality of God's names. When we bring together the truth of our faith as handed in the scriptures and the believing community, and as given in our experience of faith. However, even if we add up all those names, God still remains a mystery. And all the more we realize the distance between God's own reality and what we know of God. In a way, the trajectory of knowing, the trajectory of this knowledge is that of an asymptote. We draw near only to realize that we cannot reach that exact point. And as one magnifies this knowledge, we see the gap will always remain. If therefore this is the God that I encounter in my faith, what does it mean to me? What does it call me to do? What does it calls me to do? Saan kanya tinatawag? Anong tinatawag niya? Si comprehendis non est Deus, says St. Augustine. If you can understood it, it's certainly not God. Certainly not God. That's why in chapter 15, we read, therefore, O Lord, not only are you than which a greater cannot be taught, you are also something greater than can be taught. For since there can be thought to exist something of this kind, if you were not this being, then something greater than you could be thought, a consequence which is impossible. Mas maganda pag titignan natin yung text mismo. Sobrang ikli niyan eh. Ayan no. Chapter 15. Chapter 15. From that than which nothing greater can be thought, to that which is greater than can be thought. The 14th chapter, in a way, serves as a refresher and a summary of all of Anselm's reflection. Note that the unum argumentum, he desires to show that in this unum argumentum, he desires to show that God truly exists and is the supreme good. At first, it seems that they have been proven in the previous two sections of the Proslogion through the ontological argument and his explanations on the contradicting characteristics of God, as it seems well and good. Yet in the 14th chapter, Anselm seems to have questions remaining. Why do I have all these proofs and these explanations, and yet I see that you are still more than this? It seems that Anselm's attempt to understand and from this understanding prove God's existence does not yet satisfy him. It is in the 15th chapter that Anselm was able to finally realize what it means to stand before this great mystery that he comes to know in faith and in the religious tradition where he belongs. A great mystery that he tries to understand in one way or another, or better yet, aliquatenus, even for just a little bit. This very mystery led Anselm to the limits of his own thoughts toward the conclusion that also serves as a turning point of the Proslogion. Therefore, O Lord, not only are you that than which a greater cannot be taught, but you are also something greater that can be taught. Note that in naming this same God, Anselm makes a decisive jump. From the highest that can be thought, Anselm concedes that even this highest is something that is beyond our understanding. He is greater than can be thought. There are two implications that we can draw from this. One, if the God that Anselm believes is greater than can be taught, then one can also see a paradox here. That is contradicting realities which occurs at the same time. True knowledge of what is that? True knowledge of God can only occur once you admit that we cannot know God. Perhaps more practically, that we do not have access to Him in the same way that we know all other realities in this world. If the God that Anselm believes is greater than can be thought, then perhaps, the only way to approach Him And to appreciate his mystery will be other than thought. But if that's the case, what will our access to this God be? In a way, we can see these two implications being alive in the succeeding chapters. No? Chapter 16 to 23, those are the succeeding chapters there. And we can see there the elusive notion of God. Something else is needed in order to truly know God. Alam nyo ba itong laruan na to? Uh, True knowledge can be achieved outside knowing. How? There are a lot of things that does not have knowing as a way to experience and know them. Music, art, di ba? Perhaps love works in the same way. Diba? Love works in the same way. Nakita yung sa chat. Kami ni Ruben. 16 onwards. No? 16 onwards. No? In 16 onwards, he goes back to this question again on God and appreciates them as they are, expressing how he was astounded over how this God has gone beyond understanding. And what is needed is to gaze at him with wonder. The same wonder that drives us to ask the important questions, but also be enamored with the most significant answers to these questions. Yet from this view of wonder, Anselm, let's questions be questions. And answers be not necessarily final and definitive. It is so far, it is so, for there is always more to understand, di ba? That's why I like art, to be honest. It allows me to see more. More, no? Pag tumitingin ako, sculpture, religious works, more. To gaze at God's mystery is indeed beyond thought. Just as one gazes at an artwork, not merely to analyze and explain the details, but in its whole, to let thoughts and insights come by. To gaze at God's mystery perhaps can be beyond thought. As in one's encounter with a person whom one deeply loves, accepting him or her as she is, in all their contradictions, varying tendencies, as well as their strengths and weaknesses. Di ba ganyan umibig? These are encounters. Kaya nga, yung kanta, di ba, palagi, di ba? Palagi, ikaw ang paborito kong desisyonan, sabi ng kanta eh. Ikaw yung paborito kong desisyonan. Or sa Leaves, di ba, ng Ben and Ben, uh, uh, you only love when you learn how to forgive. These are encounters and experiences in our lives that always leaves us with open questions. And yet there is a tinge of satisfaction that there's still something that is beyond our understanding in there. As Anselm will show, there is joy. There is love. Hindi ko pa napanood yung susunod, yung again. Hindi ko pa napanood yung again. Chapter 23 to 26. 23, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit hanggang 26. Ito yung joy. Conjecture about what kind of good this is. The kinds and quality of goods for those who enjoy this good. Yan, joy yan, actually. Ito, whether this is the full joy which the Lord promises. Yan, joy. Anselm returns to the basics of his Christian faith in chapters 23 to 26. The belief in one God in three persons. Not only does this be the moment in which he does not draw from any philosophical insight on God, but also remains within Christian doctrine. This return to the belief of the community as the church that interprets the word as revealing himself in the word, hence the hermeneutical circle, has a particular reason. Anselm wants to show that the central identity of the God that he seeks to know and to prove as the supreme good is nothing other than love. If you paid attention to your theology classes, you will see that everything that Anselm says here belongs to the Christian creed. Love in itself and as the identity of God is not a philosophical movement that is of reason and understanding. Isn't it ironic, however, that philosophy is in itself a love for wisdom? Rather, it is a movement that goes beyond understanding. It is a movement of the will, of one's own being, even in the midst of uncertainty and irrationality. And some shows that the Christian faith sees and receives God primarily as love. And it is only in responding to this love that God can truly be believed, understood, and sought. And what does love bring? This sounds too cliche, but Anselm says it brings nothing but joy. It is a joy that comes with knowing even just a little, but loving and trusting this mystery so much more. Here we go full circle. Anselm desires to find God, the God he seeks to understand him and to love him. But his journey, however, did not lead him to the fullness of understanding, as God remains a mystery. Yet he finds that God's infinity is always something to desire, something to be desired, to be sought over and over again and in deeper manner, and to be loved more truly, more deeply. The proslogion, as we have seen, is not so much a proof of God's existence that compels us to believe. Rather, it is a sketch of one's religious experience, which invites us to think of how we come to know God and how we choose to believe or not in God. If there's anything that is clear, it is the fact that only in entering to this experience of faith can we truly know and understand. In the attempt to know and understand, one is led, therefore, to greater and greater belief. Anselm, in summary, leads us to a real access to God that goes beyond knowledge.